M. The Media Project.
A small town in Vermont says no to workforce housing. Should non-voting property owners be able to dictate who gets to live in Vermont? My firm recently won the nod through a request for proposal to build a 123-plus unit mixed-income development for the town of Dorset, Vermont. In the midst of negotiating a development agreement, detractors for the project made themselves known. For several months, and with our help, town leadership prepared to advocate for their efforts, which had to that point totaled more than 8 years and cost around $600,000, culminating in the release of the RFP we responded to in the summer of 2025. A week after a public hearing in January 2026, featuring statewide housing and middle-income advocates, and a month prior to a second public hearing in February, which would have featured yours truly and the SMG team to re-present the project and the principles behind our rural density concept, we received an email from the town's consultant. The award is canceled. The town will proceed to a vote in 9 months in hopes to build 60 units of high-end single-family housing. We will place the project back out to bid. This concludes our relationship. I and our consultants have been taken aback by the decision of the town of Dorset, especially when the proposal we provided was an affirmative response to the RFP provided by the town with a desire to focus on workforce and moderate income housing. Our team includes several Vermont design professionals, including architects, civil engineers, real estate consultants, and a landscape architect who has vast experience developing workforce housing solutions and housing projects in Vermont. And after several months of work by myself and the consultant team, the door was closed on us. We were awarded the project in an official legal public process. I negotiated with town officials in good faith for a developer's agreement. After all our efforts, we never got a chance to even present the project in detail, as we were told we would have the opportunity to do so. Since this time, the detractors of the project have continued efforts at getting their voices heard. The lies about our project have been amplified through local print media and local television. A new vision will now be driven, different than the town's RFP, and now likely focused on the median home values, which in Dorset, Vermont is approximately $1.3 million. So much for providing homes for workers who serve the area's main industries. So much for providing homes for young families who are leaving Vermont for more affordable housing. So much for keeping the third-grade teacher who told us she's leaving because the commute, more than an hour each way, in the winters of Vermont for the job just doesn't add up. So much for a long-term trajectory aimed at keeping the town a financeable and sustained municipal enterprise. To compare what was asked for in the RFP versus what our proposal provided, here's a partial summary of key project focus areas. 1. The town desires to see a mix of housing types, e.g., single-family, duplex, and multifamily, constructed on a portion of the property, particularly workforce affordable and senior housing. Our response. The proposal provides a large mix of housing types, including a mix of single-family, duplex, triplex, and multifamily within 3 phased areas on a portion of the property. The project has strongest focus on workforce housing. The town has performed a significant amount of due diligence analysis, which shows the property could accommodate 100 plus or minus housing units. The SMG response. The proposal provides 123 units of housing and meets the town's criteria for the conceptual development site plan analysis for septic capacity. Build-out is provided in the RFP. Our proposal also included phasing the construction of 123 housing units over a 10-year period, with the initial phase build with 27 units, the second phase with 56 units, and the third phase with 40 units. The design also includes a thoughtful approach to project phasing, so the resident nodes for each phased area are buffered between the future phased construction activities for Phase 2 node and Phase 3 node. Unfortunately, the 10-year period of full build-out was misunderstood to be a 10-year construction period by a person of influence. 3. The town performed significant due diligence and site feasibility analysis, which demonstrates the build-out capacity for approximately 100 plus or minus units. The SMG response. Our team followed the due diligence and site feasibility analysis provided by the town, including matching up with the allowable septic capacity as demonstrated by the town's engineering consultant. The 123 units provided in our proposal included a stronger focus on duplex, triplex, and quad condominium units because of the town's emphasis for the proposal to provide a particular focus on workforce housing. Unfortunately, the town has now demonstrated a new desire to reduce the number of units to 60 in total, different from the RFP. The project, number 4, would need to go through both local and Act 250 permitting with the town as co-applicant. The SMG response. Our consultant team includes many professionals highly skilled in Vermont development projects and success with Act 250 permitting. The proposed plan includes a high priority of focus on conservation of the natural resource areas with protection of wetland and wetland buffer areas, forest management, and minimizing existing tree removal as required for an Act 250 permit review. In fact, of some 303 acres of developable land, we chose to create a dense environment on approximately 36 acres closest to the road in order to leave the remainder of acreage green and accessible through an existing trail system. In addition, attention was provided to minimize site grading and road design for proper placement of housing types. This includes the management of the project phasing with protection of air, water, wildlife, with a realistic and viable approach for new infrastructure, such as water, scenic beauty, and aesthetics. The project was designed first with a focus on the natural resource areas, conservation of sensitive areas such as wetlands, maintaining the existing trail network, and existing forest buffer, with a particular focus on workforce housing as directed by the town's RFP. With the plan focused to maintain and conserve the natural resource areas, vegetative buffer areas, and trail network, the project housing integrates as a central aesthetic to a sustainable development approach, highly approvable and meeting requirements and aesthetics of an Act 250 permitting review process. In addition to the key focused areas outlined in the RFP, our team was sensitive to how much development would take place and divided the project into 3 phases with a modest number of 27 units of housing developed in Phase 1. We believe the 27 units proposed in Phase 1 would be a realistic start in the Dorset community, including the town's desire for mixed housing types and a particular focus on moderate income families, with the additional units built out in Phases 2 and 3 when it became viably feasible to do so. In addition to the key focused areas outlined in the RFP, our team was also sensitive to the square foot unit costs associated with construction, as well as were ready to address this issue as it was raised as a concern by community residents. As developers, we must place ourselves in the shoes of those who sit on the other side of the table from us, the supporters and the detractors. We must listen and then work to understand the perspective of those people and of those who would live in our community. Even those that, in the case of Dorset, do not have a voice yet because the housing they would have lived in no longer exists, with the median sale price now well exceeding $1 million. The housing is now far out of reach for most. The Vermont Housing Finance Agency, VHFA, has documented the need to address this, and the initial RFP provided by the town, as well as our response for the mixed housing here, has aligned in that regard. Unfortunately, having an opportunity to build a modest home and remain in our Vermont communities on a modest income is no longer economically feasible in many, if not most, areas of Vermont. In the case of the Dorset community, the focus to provide the needed housing for moderate income families doesn't exist when the median sale price for a single-family home now exceeds $1 million, and the pushback against the mixed housing proposed by our team has been shut down under misreadings, misunderstandings, and untruthful perceptions of this proposal by those who are adamantly against what my team proposed. It is with the utmost disappointment our team, after winning this RFP public process fair and square, never had the opportunity to present the details of this project in February 2026. Instead, the untruths and misperceptions of the project by some residents have had enough impact to derail the process completely and force the town staff to end the process. It is wholly unfair to the work and expertise by our consultant group, as previously mentioned, who put a ton of dedicated effort into a response guided by the town's RFP. The community pushback was strong and well heard by town staff, forcing an end to this proposal and likely changes in the number of units, 100 to 60, type of units, single-family focused, and perhaps the type of people the town wants to live in Dorset, high median income. We at SMG ask, who exactly is being protected here? And is Dorset discriminating against those of moderate income? If not, who will then speak for those who can no longer afford to live in Dorset? Who is speaking for the number of families as outlined in the VHFA's housing needs assessment? It appears to me that the particular focus of any new housing proposal will no longer be as focused on mixed moderate income housing and the particular focus on our workforce as previously provided in the RFP. Having an opportunity to live in any Vermont community is no longer the case when Vermont communities like Dorset push back against what is required of us to provide the housing we desperately need for moderate income families. The housing that will generate a new generation of smart growth, smart population, and sustainable tax revenue in order that we reverse some 90 years of economic neglect in our brave little state. As a developer, I've become accustomed to being seen as the bad guy in the room by default, especially in upscale communities, and especially here in Vermont. It's particularly frustrating in Dorset's case. By town leadership's own admission, a majority of detractors are second homeowners. A full 64% of all homes in Dorset are second homes for the wealthy. How can the future of an entire community hang on the whims of a small group of elected officials and their bureaucrats, incredibly sensitive to the whims of their most elite taxpayers and second homeowners, having a strong voice against the workforce housing proposed with this plan? Second homeowners who do not represent voting citizens. Who again will speak up for the essential workers and moderate income families who are being pushed out from an opportunity to live in the Dorset community? We risk repeating a familiar pattern here in which a small group of influential individuals, confident in the correctness of their own views, determines who is included to reside in Vermont communities and who is not. The Vermont Futures Project tells us the story. Vermont is rapidly aging because young people and their families leave, largely due to housing costs and availability. This has left more than 21,000 professional class positions chronically unfilled throughout the state. It's left communities rapidly succumbing to underfunded services, schools, and long-term liabilities. It's why our health insurance connector is rapidly becoming unaffordable as the pool of the insured lacks age diversity. It's why we Vermonters are now fighting amongst ourselves in nearly every city and town on the issue of housing. I want to support a housing ecosystem that is balanced in every way, that can support thousands of new small and large builders, landlords, and other industry professionals. I strongly believe and work to build in parallel to economic opportunities for new residents, so more people can afford market rate and build familial wealth by climbing the housing escalator. Again, I wish my development team had an opportunity to present our project and have an opportunity to address many of the untruths and misreadings of our concept plan that have taken such a strong hold here. Because of this unfortunate situation, I am now urged to respond in writing, and I am doing so with you. The town of Dorset specifically stated that, quote, "The primary goal for this housing project is to include as much workforce affordable housing as economically feasible." End quote. To that end, my team focused our efforts with the 123 units proposed in this plan, including a mix of housing styles, multifamily, duplex units, triplex units, quad condos, and 30 single-family homes as well. We're saddened that the town's stated approach and focus to provide as much workforce housing as feasible will no longer be the case due to the few detractors who now have a strong position to change the direction of this project. Finally, my development team will continue seeking opportunities to help address Vermont's housing challenges, particularly those affecting essential workers and moderate-income families. For those of you who fit in these categories, please know your middle market housing concerns are heard, and they are ours here at SMG.
SMG's Are We Here Yet podcast is a production of M the Media Project and SMGraves Associates. Learn more at smgravesassociates.com.